Superman's been shot.
Surgeons brought to the scene have been unable to operate. Superman's invulnerable flesh has thus far resisted all attempts to cut him.
Flash, listen carefully. I need you to go to Star Labs Kyoto and have them forge a piece of kryptonite into a scalpel. Bring it to me.
Can't help you. I got a bomb bolted to my wrist. If I stop...
It'll explode.
Yeah. I'm starting to get tired. One way or another, I'll have to try something soon.
Keep running. I'll call back when I can.
How did you know what was happening to Flash?
John, I need your help. John? John! John! It's Batman. What's happening? Batman! I'm still running! Alfred, get the Batwing ready. The Justice League is under attack.
By whom?
By me.
Welcome to Superhero Cinephiles Podcast. I'm your host, Perry Constantine, and joining me today is a returning guest. And it's been a while since we've had him on, so I'm really excited to get him back on, and that is Will Short. Will, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm ready to talk about more Justice League, because you remember that's how we started on this podcast, when my first time on.
That is right. Yes. I had semi-successfully buried the memory of having to rewatch that movie when we talked about the live-action Justice League pilot. But today we were talking about... So we've gone from talking about one of the worst Justice League movies to one of my favorites, which is Justice League Doom, the 2012 animated film. Before we jump into that, why don't you remind people about who you are and what you do and all that stuff?
Yeah, my background is pretty varied. The things that I do, my podcast, Jay's Past Tooncast, has been on hiatus for a while, but all the episodes are still up. It is a comedy podcast about the cartoons of yesteryear. We've gone as far back as the 60s, actually, with like the old Marvel, barely a cartoon, mostly like still images with mouths moving cartoons from the 60s, all the way into the 90s with some great TMNT ripoffs like Street Sharks and all that good stuff. So that's Days Past Tooncast if you want to check that out. And I forgot today, I can't believe that I forgot it. I'm a part of a sketch comedy troupe called The Wickedly Talented. You can find us at The Wickedly Talented on YouTube. I'm directly pointing to that because we have a Batman sketch that I wrote. I'm not in it except for as an announcer, but it is called The Lost Batman Episode. Yeah, I meant to send it to you just so you might get a chuckle out of it ahead of time, because there's a lot of Batman talk to be had this episode, right?
Yes, there's a lot of Batman talk to be had this episode. Sure. And I got to check that out. Yeah. So what was that? What was the name of it again?
It's at The Wickedly Talented, play on the John Travolta Oscars mishap from many years ago. I believe that's the tag on YouTube. And it'll say The Lost Batman Episode. Yeah. And some other good stuff.
Well, yeah. So we'll look it up. The John Travolta video pops right up. So maybe
I know,
we'll be able to find if I dig around a little bit. Okay, I do see it. Yes. It did have it is here. So I will definitely have that in the show notes so people can check that out.
Thank you.
And well, one of the things we like to do here is talk about what kind of stuff is interesting you lately. So what's grabbing your attention these days?
So I don't know what I'm searching for exactly in video games, but I've been searching for something. I've been finding good stuff to play. The last thing that I played and put a lot of hours into was Outer Worlds 2, which is a role-playing game, and I really enjoyed it. It's similar to Fallout, the kind of, like first person kind of a shooter, lots of choices kind of thing. Not everybody liked it a ton. I had a great time with it. I don't know. I didn't expect a ton. It was a lot longer than the first one, which I appreciate. The first one felt like a snack. But I had a lot of fun with that. And then another video game called Moonlighter, which is a little bit older, which is basically Zelda during the night, and during the day you run the shop where you sell the things you find in the dungeons. And I really enjoyed that. I really liked the cycle, I guess, the play cycle in that one.
Dude, it's so funny you mentioned that, because I have recently jumped back into the first Outer Worlds game.
Nice.
Yeah, because I played it years back when it first came out, because it was actually, I think the people who created Fallout actually did create that after they got kind of like separated from that franchise. And yeah, so I'm working on a serial now that's like a space opera and has a lot of anti-corporate elements in it. So so like as kind of like a refresh, I'm like, I want to go back into Outer Worlds and kind of jump back into that a little bit. So I just fairly recently started replaying it a little bit here and there. Have you played No Man's Sky by any chance?
I have, yeah, and I haven't played it. I mean, I know that they're always updating it. I didn't play it when it first came out. I think when I played it however many years ago, like I can't remember what they had just added, but like it was probably half as much stuff as I know they have now, because you're building your own ships now, right? That's
Yeah,
what I read.
yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, speaking of Batman talk, I built a Batwing.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Batman in space. Space Batman. You should build his UFO that he has in the closet as well, according to Grant Morrison. So,
Yeah, I should look up the
saucer.
see if I can do that. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's just a regular saucer he got from someone else rather than the one he built. But yeah, I really did enjoy it. I don't, when I see procedurally generated on a game, I know that could mean there are a lot of ways that gets used, and it's not a moral issue or anything. It's more like I don't want to play a thing that feels like it was populated to just make busy work for me. Luckily, No Man's Sky didn't feel like that to me, but that was kind of a hurdle for me to get over with that or other types of games that are kind of in that locus of, it's cool, the random shit that you're going to find. I really enjoy it. And I'm a Star Trek fan, so it's nice to have that kind of feeling of exploration. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I jump back into it every now and then because I don't really. I've done like most of the missions and type of stuff, and I don't really do like a lot of the bounties or that kind of thing. Mostly, I just kind of build stuff. So I play a lot on, and I recently decided I'm just going to turn off the resource management thing and just make everything free. So because every time I'm trying to build a spaceship, and I'm just like, I'm not getting enough parts. You have to go scavenge for stuff, and it's a pain in the ass. And I found this, and I saw on Reddit people saying just turn off the cost. I'm like, oh, you can do that outside of creative mode too. I guess that's something new they added at some point too. Yeah.
It is great with some of these games that they just are like, hey, how do you want to play this thing? I mean, not all of them are built like that, but that one definitely is. And that's real cool where it's like, do you want to just build spaceships all day? We'll do it for you. Just keep playing, man. So,
yeah.
I love that.
And it's such a de-stressor, right? Like just like building like bases or building ships and stuff. And so like I'll just like sit there when my kids are playing around, and I'll just sit there and I'm just like, I'm building spaceships. I'm just having a grand old time.
It's Legos on your screen, basically.
Exactly.
Even better. Yeah. I love that. That's great.
As for me, most of the stuff I've been consuming has been, like all related for like podcasts or for classes I'm teaching. But also, speaking of Batman talk, I recently read the second Batman '89 series, Echoes.
Oh, nice. How was that?
It was okay. Like it had the same problem as the first series, and I think this is a problem that Sam Hamm has because he's the one who wrote both of them. Where it's like it starts off really cool, and they have like kind of like this like slow burn of type of stuff, and in the first like half of it, and the second half they're just kind of like rushing to the conclusion. And I think he's got like his pacing off on it. It had the same kind of thing here. But overall, like I just like revisiting that world and just kind of like, imagining a little bit what it would have been like if Tim Burton could have gone on to keep making more films. So like the first, I don't know if you read any of them, but the first one, it had Billy D. Williams becoming Two-Face.
Right. That version of Harvey Dent. Yeah.
Yeah. And they also had the Black Robin, who was supposed to be in Batman Returns with Marlon Wayans.
That's right.
And then the second one, they brought in Harley Quinn, who's like a pop psychiatrist in this one. And Selena Kyle comes back too, but I felt like she had no real reason to be there. It felt like kind of tacked on.
And that's the thing with that character. It's like, I mean, because those I love those movies, the Tim Burton ones. But it's not like they're not. I think we've even talked about this in the podcast. They're not especially grounded. At the time, they were more grounded than the 1960s Batman show, which was a comedy intentionally. But like we tend to look back on it, it's like, yeah, it is messed up. It has its own picadillos that are Tim Burton's that he visits on it, but they are campy in their way, and those characters don't reach like a realistic conclusion where it's like, yes, and this, so therefore this world needs to continue, say like the Christopher Nolan ones in which we talked about Dark Knight Rises. So it's like, yeah, characters coming back, like villains coming back, especially when essentially she went through a death, one of many deaths, I'm sure. What are you going to do with her after that? What more could you do with that character with Batman necessarily? I'm not the one to come up with it apparently, because I think that's the end of the story, but I love that they're revisiting that world. That doesn't mean that world can be revisited. I love the thinking of, it's kind of like, you see this a lot with Lego sequels and movies these days, where it's like, forget all that, anything else that came afterwards. Let's do Halloween 1, 2. Like, let's go back to this thing and just continue it. Like, and obviously we didn't have a bunch of, I mean, we kind of had pseudo sequels and Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, but those feel so, especially Batman and Robin on their own, they don't feel like Tim Burton sequels, obviously.
Right.
So it's really cool to go back and say, well, what if we kept with this? I love that stuff. No, I was interested in it. I think my DC Universe, like for the year subscription online just ran out. Now that was intentional. I was like, okay, I've read enough for now. So I do remember opening it up and liking the art. Was Mike Allred doing the covers for those, or was it just something like his style?
I don't think it was Allred. No, it's
Okay.
I think Joe. I'm gonna mispronounce his name, but Kinones, I think is his
Mhm.
name. He's doing the interiors at least. I'm not sure who's doing the covers though, but I'm pretty
Okay.
sure it's not Allred.
I think Allred would be a clear match for the '60s one, so I may be confusing with
Oh,
Batman
yeah.
66. But no, I love that idea, and I've been checking out. Well, I went back. You know what? I did go back and read a bunch of Legends of the Dark Knight issues before. I was kind of using up my subscription, just trying to catch all the stuff I could. And went back and read like the Hugo Strange story that Doug. How do you pronounce his last name?
I
Mjorn?
think it.
Yeah.
It's funny, and I think you listened to this show too, the Iron Age of
Yeah.
Comics. I just
Yeah.
listened to their. Yeah, same here. And we had Justin on.
Oh, great.
Over the summer, and actually Jim is going to be coming on my Japan on Film podcast this season as well.
That's wonderful.
But yeah, it's funny because Jim had pronounced it Munch or something like that,
I
and
heard that,
and
yeah.
and I'm like, oh my god, my entire life I've been pronouncing it Moenk. I have
It
no
makes-
idea now.
Maybe it is Occam's razor in this case. It's like, what is the simplest way that you could say this thing? I don't know. I mean, those guys are better studied than I am, so I would tend to err on the side of they've probably heard it somewhere if that's how they're saying it. So, well, he did that great Hugo Strange early. It was basically like a follow up to year one in Legends of the Dark Knight, and that was
Prey?
really. Yeah, that's Prey.
Yes,
and that
awesome.
one's so good. The art is great. It's the same as artist that did his Masters, his Shang-Chi run back in the day. I believe the guy he always works with.
Yeah. Galassi, right?
Yes, that's it. I'm never going to pronounce any of them. I'm going to let other people say it first, and then I'll follow up afterwards. But I was doing some catching up on just stuff that I have read before, but I'm like, I have it here, unlimited in front of me. Let's do it. So I did that. I went back and read some Alan Moore Swamp Things, which are some old favorites of mine. I did check out the comic Tower of Babel, the Justice League story the Justice League story that this very movie we're going to be talking about today is based on. But as far as newer stuff, I have been enjoying the Absolute Martian Manhunter on there, which is they're kind of doing that like vertical scroll online comic thing and doing not even ultimate takes on characters, but like, you may be well aware of this, by the way. I may be explaining something you're aware of, but it's almost like, what if you did Ultimate, but also just whatever kind of you wanted with these characters, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. And the Martian Manhunter one I like the most because it is a psychedelic noir story about telepaths and a guy who's trying to hold his mind together. And I really have enjoyed it. The art is wonderful.
Yeah, I've dove into some of the apps. I was gonna say ultimate stuff, the absolute stuff. Yeah, the Batman stuff is really cool. I really love Jason Aaron's Superman stuff. I think he's really kind of keyed into something really interesting by revisiting like the whole champion of the people, champion of the press type of aspect of it, which is really cool. Wonder Woman, I checked out a few of the issues of that, but I've never been a Wonder Woman guy in general, so it's nothing against that, but I'm planning to get into that a little bit more again. Flash, I think I checked out the first arc of that, and Green Lantern I haven't looked at all. I looked at the Absolute Evil, the first issue of that, and that was pretty cool.
Have you read the Manhunter one?
I have read a little bit of it, but I just wasn't in the right headspace for it. It's one of the things that I feel like I got to devote more mental energy to kind of like
when it definitely and I mean, not that obviously you have a taste that can range outside of superheroes for sure, but it definitely feels less like a superhero. It feels like like comics with an X a little bit, not necessarily because of the content or where they go with it, but just because it is like, let somebody do some very abstracted storytelling with pictures. Just let it flow. It's almost like, what in a way it's like the latter issues of Promethea, what J.H. Williams 3 does over there, where it's like all these pages are blending in together and the everything is kind of a fog of images that I really loved, even if I'm not really even paying that much attention to the story. I'm just enjoying the images of it.
Yeah, that's something I want to key into a little bit more because I love Denise Camp's Ultimates. He's been just killing it on that book, and
Nice.
It's like explicitly anti-fascist in like the best way possible. I don't know if you've read it all, but there's one issue. It's amazing, but there's one issue where they have the original Human Torch, Jim Hammond.
Yeah,
and just like in the main Marvel universe, he killed Hitler, and they're talking to him about it in one of the issues, and he says that he's like, well, when my robot body was designed, my mind was designed. There's only so much data that I can hold, right? I don't have a big like database. So like I have to routinely delete memories. And he talks about like all these memories he's deleted over the years. He's like, but the memory of killing Hitler, that is what I keep.
We always have space for killing Hitler in our that's I like that a lot. That's really great. Yeah, someone should have written like this machine kills fascists on the side of him before he goes and does that. That's really cool. I like the sound of that.
It is awesome. Yeah, the new the ultimate stuff, the absolute stuff, they are absolutely killing it. And it's funny because the original ultimate stuff has not aged well at all.
Certainly not the ultimates. Yeah.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was thinking of. But even like Ultimate X-Men, Hickman stuff
Mark
was
Millar,
pretty good.
Not aging well.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Ultimate Spider-Man's still good. I mean, a little bit drawn out, but definitely at least fun. At least I'll say. And I never read Mike Carey's Ultimate Fantastic Four, but I love Carey's work in general, so I'd like to give that a try at some point.
Sure.
But the new stuff that Hickman designed, it's been firing on all cylinders. Like everything I've read for it, I've really dug. But I think Absolute has they've kind of like yes-anded what Hickman did, and they're like, okay, we're gonna see what you did, and we're just kind of like move the bar a little bit further. And it's gonna be really interesting to see what happens because the new Ultimate Universe is supposedly ending soon. So but it's been so well received that I don't see Marvel not revisiting it in some way or trying to do something.
Sure. Well, and then the next summer they'll do the absolute ultimate universe, and then they'll keep finding new adjectives to add onto the universe to make their next one. I mean, that's great. I mean, it is kind of it does seem like maybe this kind of lines up with back in the day, it always was that if there were movies or television involved, then the comics will have to reflect that. And that meant that our normal X-Men stories now are almost being interrupted by a new style. Now, obviously, with like that kind of coincided with Grant Morrison's run on New X-Men with the X-Men movies with the black leather and everything. But, someone's going to change physically or their background to match what's in the movies. Now, with everything, we're like, you know what? Everything's continuity. It doesn't matter. All of this is important or not important equally. Just come read the good story and see what happens. And that's nice that we have room for, let's just do it again. Let's just throw it away and start over, do a new thing. I mean, that's kind of what comics are in the best way, disposable art like that, in a good way, like that's something I value about comics.
And it's funny, I think the New 52 could have actually been much more successful if they had done that kind of thing, where they're like, here's this other thing that's like just alongside the main universe. And I think, because going back and rereading some of that stuff, there's some good stuff in there. They did there's some bangers in there, but it's just like it got overshadowed by the fact that they were erasing continuity or selectively erasing continuity or whatever the hell they were doing with that.
I wonder if DC will ever be out of their own shadow of continuity, because I know that Marvel obviously runs into continuity issues, but they don't have to constantly do things about it. I mean, at least not make like an event based around it every year, every other year, whatever it is, where it's like somebody is just sitting in a room somewhere with Mark Waid, like talking in their ear over like a secret agent, just like, okay, I'm pretty sure that Superman still arrived on Earth naked. He did not have the cape. Like whatever the thing is that we're arguing about. I mean, and I grew up at a time like I read Zero Hour and just liked it, which is not a good comic by any means, but I loved it in the 90s just because I'm like, oh, big time travel, reality stuff. But then after that, I'm like, why do I care about all these details? I just want to read Batman stories. I just want to read Justice League stories. And now I feel like currently our era seems to reflect that attitude a lot, which I'm grateful for.
Yeah, I think the fact that they do have Mark Waid on, and now he was one of the creators of Hyper Time is kind of making it just kind of like, okay, let's just kind of play jazz and see how things work out then.
Only we'll in 20 years we'll keep the ones we like and we'll chuck the rest.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, that's a nice transition. Since we talked about Mark Waid, we're talking about Justice League. So let's talk about Justice League Doom, which, as you mentioned, is based off the Mark Waid JLA storyline, Tower of Babel. Some of the big changes in it are that it wasn't the Legion of Doom and it wasn't Vandal Savage in that, but instead it was Ra's al Ghul acting on his own in that, and some of the contingency plans and stuff were different as well.
Yes.
Also, we didn't have Cyborg involved, which I think that was just kind of done as a way to kind of like key into the New 52 stuff that was happening at the time.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's start off with that Tower of Babel storyline. What was your history with that?
So, we're both big Morrison fans. So I loved JLA Morrison. That's what got his run, or their run on JLA is what kind of got me like jazzed up about the idea of put these characters on the team, let them do big sci-fi stories basically, and have a good time. When Mark Waid was coming on, I'd already enjoyed onto that because he followed Grant Morrison. I'd already enjoyed his Justice League Year One maxi series that he did with Barry Kitson on art. It was a very different role. It was like the early days of the Justice League. Now that in post Zero Hour, what does that look like without Wonder Woman, without these characters involved? And it was a very character based, very like almost sitcom-y sometimes, as far as like the character relationships matter over time. There's relationships being built and deepened and everything. And so I was really excited about him coming on. I liked him as a writer, and he was jazzed up to write Justice League. I liked his fill-ins on Justice League as well. That early one was September, Julian September. Was like
something like that. Yeah. I remember it was some month. I can't remember the exact name, but yeah.
It felt like Mark Waid doing his best take on a two-parter from Grant Morrison at JLA at that time, and that Howard Porter, the usual artist and the one that also drew the Tower of Babel story, was on it. That's a favorite Justice League story for me, just because it feels both Silver Age and modern and fun all wrapped into one. But I actually missed this storyline somehow in the midst of that. It's probably I had read the Morrison stuff as this was being published, and so when Brian Hitch came on as the artist for Justice League, who was supposed to be the regular artist and didn't quite keep up with the deadlines on that with Mark Waid, that's when I really started reading his run. So I didn't read this for a few years, even though I was into the Mark Waid run, and it's got its problems, but it's interesting. His whole run happens in the aftermath of this story. And so to not read it was a weird kind of experience, not knowing. I knew what happened, but I did not understand how the characters were taking it in the story, how the Justice League felt so betrayed by Batman. So I've reread it recently, actually on that DC service before the year was up, and I enjoyed it. I will say, both versions of it. It's interesting. I go back and forth on one. I don't have to side with anybody, but I'm like, I feel like the Justice League might be overreacting a little bit. But also, why wouldn't they? They're in an emotional time. They just almost died. So I understand why. But I think it's a cool story. It's a complicated one in the comics, isn't it? Like, because it's not just bad guy wants to rule the world. I mean, it's basically that. But it's not just bad guy wants to rule the world, needs Justice League out of the way. It's bad guy wants to rule the world, has a mind virus that is a language that ruins our ability to understand communications, and he wants to do that to reset the Earth's population so we don't keep fucking up the environment. And so he steals his Batman stuff, plans to keep the Justice League out of his way. It just seems like it almost feels like a Batman story is the thing too, more than a Justice League story at times in the comics. So I think it's a really cool comic. I do reading it. I was like, some of these solutions to these people, is that how I would stop them if I was Batman? I'm not so sure. I was curious to pick your brain on that, because some of them are more like on the money, I think, than others.
Well, I think one of the things with I can't, it's been so long since I've read the Tower of Babel story, but one of the key points that Batman mentions in the movie is he said, my plans were designed to neutralize, not to kill. I don't remember if that was actually the case in the original. Like, I think there was some ambiguity about how much Ra's had mucked with the plans. So I think that was one thing that kind of changes a little bit the view of this. Also, the fact that, Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, in this, he mentions he gets angry at Batman at first, but then he's like, you know what? I don't really think I have a problem with him having these plans, but it's just more that it's more than just the fact that he kept it a secret. He didn't let us know that he had these countermeasures in place.
Yeah.
And that I can understand as well. Now, as for me, I actually, this storyline, Tower of Babel, was actually the first JLA comic I read, because I wasn't reading Morrison stuff at the time, but I'd heard everybody talking about it. And then when I started getting into collecting comics regularly, someone on a message board or something there said, oh yeah, Mark Waid's doing JLA. It's really good. You should check it out. And I said, okay, so I'll check it out. And I started up with this storyline, and yeah, I dug it right from the start, and I became a regular reader of JLA after that, up until around the time of the Joe Kelly run is when I started dropping off from monthly comics in general.
Sure.
And it wasn't against Joe Kelly. It was just that I was just dropping off the comics in general.
Yeah.
I just ran out of money because
Sure,
that
it
was
was
the time when I
around,
started
you
going
know,
to university. Yeah.
I think it was around the time for me too, so I was probably dropping off around that time as well.
Yeah, and then later on, I went back and I got the Morrison trades and I read them all the way through. So yeah, and it's interesting because in some ways it both kind of honors, but it was also kind of a call and response to what Morrison was doing. Because one of the big criticisms of Morrison's run was the whole Bat God thing, the fact that he has a contingency for everything. And then here, some Waid comes in and he says, okay, we're going to take that idea of him having a contingency for everything and we're going to turn it around on him. And I thought that was a really cool way to do it. And the fact that you're using Ra's al Ghul and showing what a massive threat he is capable of being to challenge the whole Justice League, I thought was a really cool idea. And I think that was one of the things that really kind of keyed me into that first storyline, because I think one of the first covers was Ra's al Ghul like walking amongst like these the costumes, like almost like grave markers of all the Justice League.
Yeah, like they're turned into like that almost like your clothes are both crucified and a scarecrow almost at the same time, and they're burning effigies, and he's walking away looking over his shoulder like, I did it. Which is I mean, he's a great character, Roz. So I mean, I certainly liked having him there, and his speech patterns, his interactions with Talia, and that where Talia ultimately is part of the way the whole thing goes wrong for him, because she does not like causing this emotional pain to Batman, and she doesn't agree with some of it, which is funny, having read some of Grant Morrison's Batman run recently, where it's like Talia is she's the gas on a lot of this stuff, like she doesn't care. But it was an interesting choice of villain, because obviously when you think like Justice League, or when I think Justice League threats, I think it better be the end of the world if the Justice League is coming together, you know, with at least with this kind of team of Justice League, you know, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Flash, like they could remake the universe, and probably have in some of the Justice League stories with that lineup. So it better be something that really requires them. And when I think Ra's al Ghul, I don't think of that, but that's the point. He's attacking them without them even knowing, one, who's behind it. Obviously that it's Batman's plans, but that is something we talked about when we talked about Avengers Siege a little bit. That's something I haven't seen done enough with supervillains, I think, which is the supervillains or superheroes are being taken down and they have no idea who did it or why. They just know the terror of this is happening to me. And it's usually supervillains are saying, here's my name, here's my deal, here's why I did it, here's how I did it, probably. And when you don't do that, it definitely feels a more modern, it feels a little more devious. And I really appreciate that in Ra's.
I remember someone commenting, I think it may have been our old mutual buddy Russ Anderson, talking about Mysterio, and how Mysterio is such an interesting character because he causes all this trouble for people, and then when he just shows his face, like, it is I, Mysterio, then immediately after that he gets punched in the bullhead and he's done.
He's an actor, right? He wants the credit. He wants you to, at the end, he wants to take the mask off and take his bow, because he wants you to know, at least the Quentin Beck version, right? Like that's his name, right? Did I pull that correctly? Spider fans. I think, and that's a really good character point. And I think Ra's, while his ego is large, he does want the actual outcome he's shooting for. It's not a show for him. He is actually trying to make this happen. It's a little bit in the Watchmen, Ozymandias name. Yeah, thank you. Ozymandias, Quasimandias. That's only if you're kind of Ozymandias. Like that, you know, like, I did this 10 minutes ago. I already did that, you know, kind of mentality of like, I'm not here to play a character. I'm here to accomplish this, you know, brilliant but terrible goal. And so that was a very cool feeling in that.
Yeah. So this movie, it was written by Dwayne McDuffie, who also did a run on the JLA comics. He did several episodes of the Justice League Unlimited series as well. And in fact, he passed away before this came out, because there's a memorial for him in the credits. And this is, and it's fitting that he came on to do this, because this very much feels like kind of even though the designs are completely different, but other than that, like, it very much feels like a sequel to Justice League Unlimited, in that you have this pretty much the same voice cast, right? Kevin Conroy's back as Batman, Susan Eisenberg as Wonder Woman, Carl Lumley as Martian Manhunter, Michael Rosenbaum. Here, though, he's playing Barry Allen. He's not playing Wally.
Yes.
And, but you also have, because they couldn't get, ironically enough, Tim Daly couldn't commit to doing Justice League, so they got George Newbern. But then in this case, they went to George Newbern. Newbern was busy, so then they were able to get Tim Daly.
That happens sometimes. You say, sorry, I can't. throws everything to yeah, and then later like, well, can you now? Yeah, great. Well, that's great because that is, I think hearing those voices for those that had watched the cartoon or watched even the individual Superman or Batman series on their own, it immediately settles you in. There's no adjustment period of like, okay, what kind of Superman are we playing? What kind of Batman? It's like, this is like your bread and butter, what we've had for the past 20 years, versions of these characters. You're comfortable with them. So I think that plays a bit into the bad things are happening to the people that we know and care about kind of element there. Because it's like, it's not just a new Superman. It's my Superman that I've had for, I mean, he's still doing it, right? I mean, at least on occasion. Yeah. Like Tim Daly, like that's been Superman for 30 years almost. So that's wild.
Yeah. And instead, because we don't have Jon Stewart in this or Kyle Rayner, who were both in the different animated versions, Kyle Rayner in Superman and then Jon Stewart in Justice League. But here we get Nathan Fillion as Hal Jordan. And
he's great.
My God, perfect casting. Yeah. I mean, like, I've never been a big Hal Jordan guy. Like I read some of the Jeff Johns stuff. And I'm like, it's okay. But I was always keyed in more towards like Kyle or one of the other ones. But
same here. Kyle was my guy because that's who was Green Lantern when I read comics. It was when one of my first DC comics. But yeah, Hal, I felt like when Jeff Johns was bringing back Hal, I almost felt like I was being sold the idea more than the character of he's like Tom Cruise in Top Gun. He's like the coolest guy. And I'm like, well, he may be that to you. I grew up with him, not even as a villain, as a troubled older guy. He's a middle-aged man to me. So it was hard for me to reset. Same thing with Wally and Barry, or as the Flash, where I'm like, I have maybe more attachment to Barry because Wally does as a family member. But I'm like, it's kind of like SNL. You like the cast that was there when you're 14. And that was the case with the Justice League. I had Wally and Kyle. But yeah, I mean, Nathan Fillion, who just gave us a wonderful turn as Guy Gardner. He can't stop being Green Lantern, this guy. But he is, and especially having watched Firefly now, he would have been an awesome on-screen Hal Jordan, really. Like, he has the balls, the charisma, he's a handsome guy. Like, he would have, I think, made a great version of Hal Jordan. And here, he's one of the better performances for sure. I think he shows more range and is more expressive than a lot of the people there. And obviously he just has a great, like, dulcet tone voice. So you want to hear what he has to say.
No, yeah. I mean, so what you said, the whole idea of like him being like Maverick in this, like I was buying that with Nathan Fillion in this part. And like, I was like, man, my God, do I like Hal Jordan now?
Yes. And it's funny how some characters to me, once they get voiced, I'm like, oh, I thought I liked that character, but maybe this is not going with my version of it or whatever. But in this case, it's like, yes, that's who you need. I need to hear that said out loud by a guy that I would want to hang out with. That's what I need Hal Jordan to be, is someone I would want to hang out with. And he usually isn't in the comics.
Yeah. Although I'm really curious to see, I'm blanking on the guy who's going to be playing him in Lanterns, but
I am too. That's a really interesting project. I'm in. I'll try it out.
It looks interesting. I'm really curious about it. And they just had that one clip of it. But the thing I thought was, and I'm watching it, Kyle Chandler. That's who it is.
Yeah.
But one of the things that when you're just saying that about Nathan Fillion, it made me think, okay, here you're going to be doing an older Hal Jordan anyway. You've got Nathan Fillion. So
why not bring him in?
But James Gunn, I mean, I'm not going to complain because I did love him as Guy Gardner too. So
he was so good. Yeah, I'll take that because also he manages to make Guy Gardner, because Nathan Fillion is so, whether you've seen him in other things or not, he's naturally likable on screen. It helps make that character, even when he's at his worst, you still want him around. You still want to see more of him. And that's not always easy to pull off with the asshole, who's not also a villain, who's kind of almost like a third villain, but also on your side. And he's the Lancer, I guess, like as an archetype goes. That's not always easy to pull off without just being an asshole. And Nathan Fillion was the right way to go. Man, I really loved his performance in that. When he comes in at the end of Superman, I was so ready for him to be there. I really appreciated that. But yeah, he is great as Hal Jordan here. And it's interesting what they do. His way of being defeated in this, because that's what's going on in this, is every Batman has a plan for every single Justice League member in case something goes wrong. And in the comics, he has a lot of background to pull from. Like, remember when this thing just happened a month ago? That's actually like a cross DC continuity crossover where it's like everybody lost their minds and Superman was evil for a minute. And this happens all the time, right? Like telepaths, magic, duplicates, whatever the things are. Also, what if somebody just goes bad, like our old friend Hal Jordan did later, because Parallax apparently did something? But like it's so he has a plan for everybody that he's not planning on using, but he will if he has to. And then the one for Hal Jordan that he has is pretty, I gotta say, fucking wild. It's wildly ornate plan for Hal Jordan. But that also allows for Nathan Fillion to really cover some range, because he gets to play a lot of cool stuff.
I think he gets the most play out of all of them here, who's not Batman, really. When I think about like one, at least from character perspective and stuff like that.
Agreed.
But yeah, he if they had anyone else, I don't think it would have sold as well. So he definitely pulls that off the ball. And it was also interesting that the way they changed some of the plans here, because in some cases they change them in ways that's a little bit more basic, like Superman, instead of like this synthesized red kryptonite, it's just, oh, kryptonite bullet. I'm like, okay, well, that was obvious. Yeah. Yes. But for Hal, it was really, because in the original one, it was Kyle, and it was a post-hypnotic suggestion that made him think he was blind. Yeah. And because Kyle's an artist, and that's where he draws a lot of his inspiration from as the Green Lantern, that made a lot of sense. So changing it from here, where Hal is just very confident and going right at his confidence and making him think he made a mistake and he screwed up because he was too cocky. It was a great way of changing it up so that you're latching into something that is key to his character.
I definitely see that element of it being like, because that's kind of the thing. Batman's plans, they don't all show this, but many of them are also, they're psychological. They're not purely a physical. I mean, Martian Manhunter, guy's a glass cannon. You light him on fire, he's done. So, like, you don't have to worry about the psychological aspect. Superman, Kryptonite, you don't have to trick him into this stuff. You just show up. But people like Wonder Woman, where it's like, she will keep fighting to the end no matter what. So use that to your advantage and force her to tire herself out. Rope-a-dope, basically, with her. And similar thing with Green Lantern. In the case of Kyle Rayner in the comics, the thing that played for me better than just him being blind was that he's Kyle Rayner. He's still new to being Green Lantern, and he's not the most confident person in that area. So when you remove the thing that is his bread and butter, his backbone, which is being a visual artist, he just says, I'm done with life. I'm done being Green Lantern. I'll never make anything again. And he has to kind of be coaxed out of that. But that's an attack on Kyle Rayner, even more than a Green Lantern, I would think. It's like, this guy, we can topple him if we shake his confidence here. With Hal Jordan, I believe that he would be concerned about this. I think the way it plays out in the cartoon is just so weirdly staged that he is drawn into this salt mine of like essentially like doomsday preppers or who knows how they would line up with today's politics, but a militia. I'm seeing the time. Do we need to? Yeah,
we just got to go. Totally just hop over to break, and then we'll come right back.
Blast off into a new universe with Corsairs, a new sci-fi space opera serial by me, Percival Constantine. In these adventures, join the crew of the Corsair, a group of intergalactic mercenaries, as they struggle to survive in the depths of corporate-controlled space. If you're a fan of Firefly, Cowboy Bebop, or Guardians of the Galaxy, then you're going to love Corsairs. Subscribers to my Patreon get 2 new episodes a week, while free members get 1 new episode a week starting in December. Patreon offers new subscribers a 7-day free trial, but I'm also throwing in another perk. If you sign up with the coupon code SCP, you'll get 90% off your first month. So visit patreon.com/Percival Constantine and join in the adventures. We all love superhero movies and TV shows, but what about the comics that inspired them? Marvel, DC, Image, and more have provided the template for the movies and shows we all enjoy watching, and it's important to honor that tradition by buying and reading comic books. Superhero Cinephiles is proud to be an affiliate of mycomicshop.com. It began as a small mail-order business operated by junior high school student Buddy Saunders all the way back in 1960, and has been operating on the internet since 1997. My Comic Shop has new releases, value packs, back issues, trade paperbacks, comic art, regular auctions, and a whole lot more, including 35% discounts on pre-orders. You can also sell your own comics or utilize their consignment services. You can even create your own want list of comics you're searching for. To get started, check out our affiliate link in the show notes or on the superherocinephiles.com homepage.
And we are back. So sorry, Will, we had to cut you off there. So why don't you finish what's your thought?
Of course, no problem. So that sounds like, it just seems, it's just, I don't know. it wasn't that flashy. Maybe that's what really got me, is that, okay, here's this cosmic powered hero that I'm used to, like, making these giant ring constructs, going into space, doing all these things. And then he is responding to being called into a salt mine to deal with a militia who are firing guns at him. And then he thinks, uh-oh, I didn't respond properly. The place blew up and one person died. I choose to believe that how that would affect Hal Jordan. I think that he certainly cares about the people he's trying to save. I think in my mind, I'm like, certainly people have died on their watch before. Superman would talk. Everyone's had the Superman talk where Superman's like, hey, we can't save them all. And I know, believe me. So that's my, not quite headcanon, but my psychological take of like, I think this would affect him. But the idea that he would be manipulated into just giving up being Green Lantern on the spot is a little hard to swallow. And then when they take into account later how this all played out, it's like everybody was robots, and we don't deal with, obviously, the fear toxin of the Scarecrow, that felt okay, that edges this into, I'll accept this. But it, until that moment, I was like, what is happening to Hal Jordan? Is he having a bad day already before this happened? Because it felt like such a give up moment. And so maybe I just wanted to see something that was a little more Hal Jordan-y than I'm going to go take on a militia. That feels Green Arrow, if anything, to me. But that's a quibble, obviously. Also, it's funny because I wrote a Justice League fan fiction that, not quite like this, but it was Green Lantern and some Justice League members are having to deal with a militia in a cave somewhere. And so it was like interesting. I'm like, wait a minute, didn't this happen?
Wayne McDuffie ripped you off.
Yeah, I doubtful. But it was just a funny flashback to me to the mid 2000s. But again, like, it does allow him to show us a lot of range of Hal Jordan is genuinely distraught over this. And of course he is drugged, so it makes sense why. I don't know enough about Carol Ferris or Star Sapphire, whether it's classic or modern, to really get what's going on with them in this, other than she keeps saying, it's such a slapdash characterization of like, you broke my heart and I'll keep fighting you forever. That's my deal. That felt a little strange to me, so I didn't quite get what was going on between them in it. So maybe I'm a little lost on what I should know for that to matter or to make more sense, maybe.
Yeah, I had read I was curious about this myself a while back, just for unrelated reasons. And I started to look up like the history of like why she became Star Sapphire. And apparently it was a brainwashing thing or something. I don't know, but I never read those comics, so I'm not sure. And I now in the current one, she was in the first Justice League Unlimited trade that Mark Waid did. So and
they've done that whole thing also where it's like, well, I'm sure back in the day, the Green Lantern Corps was the Green Lantern Corps. We didn't have multiple cores. We didn't have all the rings, the spectrum, all this stuff. So, and then she became Star Sapphire, whatever that story was. Eventually that got, like lassoed into this. And that's a certain emotion. So I know, and these are the cartoons. I mean, the benefit and to sometimes the detriment of these cartoons is like, well, they kind of get to decide what they're pulling from the comics. Especially, I know this is supposed to be like a standalone sequel to Crisis on Two Earths. Is that right? Something like that.
I actually don't know.
Okay, I think I'm just quoting Wikipedia, so take that with a grain of salt. But as I understand it, it's like similar lineup that you're now adding Cyborg to. But either way, they have that benefit of like, hey, we can kind of take a version of a character that we want. We want Hal Jordan, we're going to use that. We want Cyborg in the team. We want Barry Allen, etc. But it also kind of robs us a little bit of why some of these things matter. Or like, for instance, I know Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman are like a core trio. The core like backbone of the league as far as like, because they're icons. That's what we think of them as. But that Batman would come up with these ideas when I'm just watching a single movie that doesn't really have backstory, that it doesn't feel very lived in, and these characters don't seem especially close in the story because there's not a lot of room for characterization except for, like you said, Batman. Green Lantern gets second place for that. It feels like the things that matter in the Mark Waid story, which does get delivered to me, like hits hard when Plastic Man, who's not present in this, who's like usually the goofball, is like serious all of a sudden for the rest of the comic. He's not joking around. You're like, this has hurt somebody's feelings and it matters. This movie doesn't have the benefit. It has an hour and 15 minutes to tell this somewhat emotional story that is about trust. And it ends up being like a bunch of punching and then Batman quits. So that it's unfortunately, because of the structure of it, it doesn't get to rely on years of continuity, stories building up, stories following up afterwards.
Yeah. And that's an interesting thing about it too, because we see, the whole thing with with the whole Hal Jordan thing, I was kind of trying to figure out like I like the idea of it, but I think what you're saying was also some really good points too, where I'm just wondering like I think at some point if when you see Star Sapphire involved in this too, and this girl is also named Carol and she looks just like her.
Yes.
Fear toxin or not, maybe some alarm bells should be going off in your head here at some point.
And not certainly not to dump on Dwayne McDuffie. It seems like as a plot, like as just a thing to present in a plot, let alone being a plot, designed by Batman, who's a pretty efficient guy. It seems like a really inefficient plan. I know that Green Lantern's super powerful, like you got to watch out, but it just seemed like a weirdly ornate plan that didn't seem like it was. One, I think more than anything else, it was not an entertaining plan. It was interesting and it was cool to see Hal Jordan, hit the notes, but it was a weird, complicated thing where some of them are like, yeah, they're either super simple with the kryptonite bullet, which you got to wonder, did Batman imagine a bullet or did he imagine just kryptonite? Because doesn't love bullets, that guy. But, whatever the delivery method is, or something more like the Flash really using his powers, like deep knowledge of his powers against him. Because that one's probably, I think, the best because it seems the smartest. And even though it doesn't really, it's not based so much on psychology, it is the easiest one to be like, well, they speeded him. They made him the bus in speed. He has to keep going. And unfortunately, he will run out of fuel and he'll die because that man's got to eat. But there's this problem. So that one is like, ooh, good idea. I think that goes straight through. But they all vary of like how much they're really relying on knowledge of the character in a deep way. And with the Hal Jordan one, it's like, yeah, it just missed the mark for me, I think, more than any of the other ones. But they're also having to invent something for a completely different person. Like we said, Kyle Rayner, very different character from Hal Jordan.
Yeah. Another thing too was what they did with Wonder Woman. One of the things that is never picked up in the movie. Like I understand, I don't think this is what Batman would have done in his original plan.
Yeah.
But because it would have endangered innocence. But one of the things that I thought was interesting was they never addressed the fact that Wonder Woman just went hog wild on a bunch of civilians.
I know. I thought the exact same thing. I'm like, and it's because what happens, like she's in the comics, it's like I think they even say it's like VR essentially, or how they compare it, where she's just thinking, I have to just fight. I'm constantly in a battle with some armored, I think it's just kind of a rando basically, but she thinks she's in a battle. And this, yeah, I think this is a much better execution because it's interesting. It's kind of fun to hear that voice actor doing all these different cheetahs that are saying Wonder Woman's surrounded by real people, but they all look like her villain cheetah, and they all have this great, super sexy English voice actor doing this. Like, what do you think is the problem here? Why? Oh, look at Wonder Woman. She's so hot. All this, like, that's a super lot of fun. But yeah, they're all just, some of them are kids probably, and she is not holding back. Wonder Woman is very powerful. So yeah, at the end, when you see that what's happening is she's punching these like cops out or like riot guys out, I'm like, I think there were some casualties this day and we're just not going to talk about it. Sorry, Wonder Woman. Yeah, it's really funny. And I do like that pulls in again into her character a bit where it's like Wonder Woman's not going to back down, especially if she is deluded by this imagery. And I choose to believe, maybe doing a little work for the writers of like, I'll choose to believe that this is disorienting enough to have her believe that this is truly happening, because Wonder Woman's super smart. I think she would know usually if she wasn't kind of off kilter. Why are there 1,000 cheetahs around me? Like, I'm going to start questioning this. And there's a big struggle with Cyborg at the end of that. But it's a cool idea. Now, in the comics, they say she's going to have a heart attack. And I think Cyborg says that too.
That's implied. Yeah. Like, I think he said something like they're trying to get her to fight until her heart gives out or something along those lines, he said.
Kind of the Flash thing again of like, the only thing that probably could tire you out is you just using your powers to the limit like that. With Wonder Woman, it's always so hard with her, man, because like what kind of Wonder Woman are we dealing with? And this one, it seems like her bracelets are super important. So she's pretty durable, but seems like she doesn't want to get hit by a bullet. That's not a good idea for her. And it's so, over the years, I know Superman's powers, have grown and shrunk and everything, but like pretty much we're all agreed on the general vulnerabilities of Superman. Wonder Woman, it's a grab bag. And so it's always a weird thing to come up with what actually would stop her. Can she have a heart attack? She's a magic creature. I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah.
Who would answer that these days?
Well, I think that's kind of what I think that was kind of the thing they were running up to, because I don't think anybody really knew
Yeah.
what her
And that's fine.
weaknesses.
And that-
Also, just as a note too here, I really loved Robin Atkin Downs as Alfred in this. I thought
Yeah, he was good. He
his
was fun.
dry delivery in the beginning of the sarcasm, and then at the end he's
Yeah.
like, by the way, that was sarcasm.
Yeah, that was that sold me on him. Yeah, I thought he was a lot of fun. He gets to pepper in there a little bit. And it's funny, Kevin Conroy, I feel like at that time, I felt like this was actually a little bit younger Batman than the Batman in the Batman animated series, both in tone of voice and just like how he was written and played. He was a little more catty, for lack of a better term. Like he would also play a little bit more with Green Lantern when they did this whole at the beginning. It's like Hal Jordan throws this like, you owe me one, and the Batman's like, well, nobody's counting, but if anyone was, it would be 8-7, you know, like
In
who
favor
owes
of me,
who?
yeah.
Yeah, and so on one hand he's a little bit more of a bro, but on the other hand he's arguing with Alfred in a way that doesn't feel like, not arguing, but you know, like Alfred and him, his relationship to me makes it feel like this is newer, and Alfred thinks this thing needs to stop a little bit, which I like. I like these different versions. And Kevin Conroy, how do you stop him? You can't. I mean, he was the best.
No, I do love that little banter they had going on. I thought that was it's good, because if Batman is too distant from the rest of the Justice League, then that betrayal, well, yeah, of course you would betray them then, obviously. So when there's a little bit more of a camaraderie with them, then it feels a little bit more, the betrayal feels more serious.
Right. And it's so interesting. I mean, obviously it's a comic book, it's superheroes. So like the level of emotion that we're dealing with probably should be exactly as it is, because it's a soap opera, or, you know, it's not X-Men soap opera, but it is more character than often we saw in the Morrison Justice League in the comics, which I loved, but it was like so many things are happening. We just have to put it in dialogue. There's very few quiet scenes. It's not about the relationships. Those are established. Waid's approach was much more, let's see how these people interact with each other. Let's pare it down to this. And this story is meant to highlight that quite a bit with this betrayal. I think we get down to a question of like, is this a betrayal? And I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts of it too much, but it's like, well, in a world where we have psychics and all these many things, if Batman told them he was doing these plans, could that possibly lead to them having a solution to these plans in those things? And obviously, but the definition of the betrayal is not a black and white issue. The betrayal is really the feeling of betrayal by those who feel betrayed. And you can't argue with that. That's just, you know, you feel how you feel. Your feelings are valid. So of course they feel this way, but it's an interesting idea because there's not really a correlation between these things, unless you say like, I don't know, our military, the army has a secret plan for if the Navy turns heel and decides to fight the army. Like we don't have the Justice League. We don't have an equivalent of this. Obviously, as far as I know, like as far as like secret plans and stuff like that.
Well, actually, I think they do actually have. I'm pretty sure for a fact that the U.S. does have like contingency plans about like different countries, if like different countries come at them or something like that. So
Yes.
So yeah, there is that kind of precedent in there in real life. What do you think about the idea of using Vandal Savage instead of Ra's al Ghul? Because for me, I feel like something gets lost when it's not Ra's, because I feel like the personal connection to Batman is really necessary first to understand, to know that he's Batman, that Bruce Wayne is Batman, to know that he'd have these plans and to be able to find access to them.
Yes.
And I feel like with Vandal Savage, we're trying to take a square peg and fit it in a round hole that way.
I agree. I think there's a trade-off, and I think ultimately there's something better for each side. Like each of them offers something that the other doesn't, but ultimately I think Ra's al Ghul created the better story for the reason that you stated, that it makes sense that it would be so focused around Batman versus another character who's really just like a all play. He's everybody's worst villain, or nobody gives a shit because he's just kind of a moral guy. You need him, he's there as a villain. The Ross part, I think that I had a complaint about the story in the comics. The main one would be, oh, this feels so much more like a Batman story with the Justice League off to the side. As much as we focus on them, there's a lot of focus on the Batman stuff, because Ross does this whole thing. Not only do they steal the Wayne's bodies, but he's going to put them in the Lazarus pit. That's the threat at the end. So Batman's distracted this whole time with this thing, and really is saying, I don't care. Justice League, shut up. I got this to deal with. This is my trinket I have to go run and deal with. And that's a good thing, but it does feel a little weighted toward Batman storytelling. So with Vandal, the idea I think is like, okay, let's take a similarly, like you could believe that this man has this amount of power, this amount of reach, could do this plan, but shave off the part where it's just about Batman. And on paper, I think, great, that could work. But Vandal Savage isn't really very interesting, I don't think. At least as I've seen him portrayed usually, and in this cartoon similarly. Well acted, great voice. I believe the guy who played Martian Manhunter on Smallville is the guy.
Yeah, Phil Morris.
Yeah. But it's like, even though they go through his whole story, I was a caveman and a meteor fell and it made me immortal and very smart. That's cool. I like that idea, but I don't buy that we believe that Ross believes that Roz is doing the right thing, right? Give Roz what Roz wants. He wants the world to be under control this way, and I believe that because he's well-spoken and interesting. Vandal doesn't have the charm. And there is, like you said, there is no personal connection here. He's not Superman's villain. He's not Wonder Woman's villain. He's not any one person's villain. He just thinks the Justice League are the cops, and I got to make sure the cops are distracted while I pull off this crime, basically. And so, yeah, I think you do lose something. You do get added in a bunch of supervillains, some of which I think work really well. Other ones, it's hit or miss for me. But I do think that the story would benefit from a more charming or interesting villain at the center of it, and Ross is an easy grab from the original story for that.
That's why I think it would have been better if you had. I agree with what you said there. I think having the Legion of Doom was good. It gives you some more action in when they go after them. But when you don't have, so I think maybe if they had just swapped out Vandal Savage for Ra's al Ghul, I think it would have worked out a lot better and had him organize the Legion of Doom. And I think that would have made more sense for me. That would have worked a lot better, especially if you could have gotten who's it who played him? Christopher Plummer?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Oh no, not Christopher Plummer. It's ridiculous. It's someone else. I'm gonna remember who it was, and it's gonna drive me.
Who played him? Orson Welles? Yeah. No, I'm not sure. Well, and I think, because I think about that too. In this, like, you have this situation where Vandal Savage is saying, I'm paying each of you supervillains who are basically the arch villain, or at least the chosen arch villain for this cartoon of each of these Justice Leaguers. I'm going to pay you each $10 million to do this thing, carry out this plan, and then I have more for you in the future. Again, not the actor's fault, but like this character is just not very interesting to me in the moments until we understand more about him later. So I'm not buying that these characters even want to pal around with this guy, even for money. It feels very low stakes on their end, where it's like, you're going to pay me money to do this. And when he throws genocide later into I thought one supervillain would be like, hey man, I just kind of wanted $10 million. I'm not into killing half the planet. But nobody did. And that felt like a weird, obviously he set it up to where he's like, money won't matter anymore. But I felt like somebody who's not, I don't know, Mirror Master feels like he's not into genocide. He's a guy who steals shit. Like, that's wild.
Yeah. No, I had the same idea about that too. And it was David Warner, by the way, who played Roz in the Batman the Animated Series.
But if the point, I'm sorry to interrupt. The point being, I think if Ross was in that choice, not Ross, Ross was in that point.
Ross from Friends doing it.
Yeah, exactly. If Ross Geller was in there, it would have been a lot better. If Roz was doing that, I think I would have just accepted that these things are happening, because you believe him when he speaks. I mean, you may think he's a monster, he's going to do terrible things, but he believes in what he's doing, and he will use his charisma to kind of overpower those around him. He's in charge of a worldwide web of assassins. Like, you believe this man, he's been around a while. So yeah, I think that element, and also you would have someone who's constantly like, and then this will happen to Batman, and then they're invested. Whereas Vandal is standing at a podium in the Legion of Doom thing that's in the swamp, which I love that they did pull that from Super Friends and made it cooler. And it's funny, they're specifically in the Louisiana swamp, which to my mind, I'm like, where's Swamp Thing? Where's the Belle Reve prison? Where's Amanda Waller? I want to see all my friends, my Louisiana pals there. But yeah, I do think that Roz, as much as I wanted there to be less Batman emphasis in the story in the comics, he's such a right choice to just do a 1-to-1, just pull him over and give him supervillains to work with, because he doesn't do that very often, does he?
No, I don't think so. And also on that point too, about how Savage gets them all to agree with it, the money thing was a weird motivation, because so some of them I could see, right? Metallo, obviously he would go into it for money. Mirror Master, probably up until the genocide point, he'd definitely be in it. But Malafak, I don't know about much of this guy in the comics, but doesn't seem like he's someone who cares much about money. Seems like he's just someone who wants to kill his brother.
Yeah.
Cheetah as well seems like she just wants to kill Wonder Woman, and Star Sapphire, at least as she's portrayed in this, she just seems more intent on getting revenge against Hal.
Yes.
And then Bane, obviously, he's not really. I mean, I guess in some instances he might be interested in money, but not to this extent. I mean, Bane's got like, well, Bane, he was part of that whole legacy thing and the Contagion thing in the comics, so he could probably go along with. Which again, if you had Roz here, it'd make more sense.
I think it highlights which of the villains are more understandably there or chosen, why they were chosen than others. Because the ones that have a personal grudge, I am more willing to accept that they're there, and you don't even need the hand wavy reasoning of here's money for them. Like if you're going to put together a Legion of Doom, which is essentially in the comics originally you had the Injustice Gang, which is such a funny. It sounds like people just on the street who are going to go beat up the Justice League, but like. The neighbors that don't like the Justice League, but the idea of the opposite numbers of the Justice League. So really, like in the comics, that would mean, like Lex Luthor or Brainiac, and then the best of the Batman villains, the most Wonder Woman villain, that kind of thing. And it's okay that they didn't do that, but because you have some characters here who are not that, they're not being played as that interested in, like Mirror Master. He doesn't care about the Flash. He wants the money. I don't know if any of the rest of them would really be. Maybe Metallo. He needs to buy more human costumes to put over his metallic body that he wears in this. But yeah, it feels like a hand wavy reason to be like, hey, yeah, sure, they're here for money. That's what got them here. And it's kind of funny because we start off with the most money based group ever of villains, the Royal Flush Gang. Who is there a story truly about the Royal Flush Gang that is not just them setting up the Justice League at the beginning of a Justice League story about something else? Because
I was wondering about that too. Like, are these guys ever consistent? Because like every time I see them pop up in something, they're always like completely different.
They are the villain at the beginning of the James Bond movie that's there to show you how James Bond does business before he moves on to the real problem. But they are always, I mean, and in this, they're even given a really cool, almost anime style like makeover physically. They look cool. They're well done. But I'm like, this is a Superman. This isn't even a Superman level threat. They're doing the most super criminal shit. They're stealing diamonds, and obviously there's a connection to the Vandal Savage plot ultimately with that. But it's just such a funny thing. Like, these are people. There's not a character to each of them. There's a character to the team. They have a theme of cards, and they're stealing diamonds, and the whole Justice League shows up, and they just get ripped to shreds for the most part. And I'm like, yeah, this is my only understanding of this group of people, is that they exist to give the Justice League something to do at the end of the day. And I really like seeing them though, because it's like, yeah, I guess give us 10 minutes to these guys. We'll move on to the real stuff in a bit.
Well, also on the Vandal Savage thing too, like another thing about the money thing, because he talks about how the governments are going to be eliminated after the solar flare thing. So that money's going to be pretty much worthless.
Well, and he says that, I think that's the thing. I won't get into the nuts and bolts of it. Basically, he does admit that when he says, my next part of the plan, which I did tease you guys with, will make the money I've paid you completely moot, because it's going to be this. And at that point, it's like, I think Cheetah says, like, what choice do we have but to take part in this? And I'm like, hey, man, genocide, you don't have to do it. You just don't have to do it. Like, you could, he's just Vandal Savage. You could probably take him right now. But I just wanted to see somebody balk more at that thought in the moment, and I think I'm wanting something out of this that just won't happen in an hour and 15 minutes,
Yeah, that the runtime works against it in that, because I watched this in like two parts. So I watched part of it one day, and then I just ran out of time, so I watched the rest of it. And like the whole part about like the Justice League, being taken down by these plans and everything, that eats up like a good 2/3 of the runtime. And so you just have like a very short amount of time to get to the end where they all confront the Legion of Doom and stop the solar flare thing with the wacky sci-fi stuff and that. And so I think that's one of the biggest failings I've always said with these animated films. I really think that they could have benefited from a little bit extra runtime. Like, instead of just making it, an hour and change, at least push it to the 90-minute mark, or see if you can go a little bit beyond.
If not that, then there are, I mean, and I'm specific about these things. This is wonderfully animated. It's I like the designs, everything. There are a lot of moments of action that feel slow to me, where there's a beat that is just like, what are we doing? Why are we waiting? These are super characters. They should be moving much faster. Maybe that's just a nitpick on my part. But I was like, the reason I was getting bored sometimes is because the fighting, which should be an exciting moment, was often feeling kind of lumbering to me, or even moments where it's just we're talking but we're fighting at the same time. There are these pauses and I'm like, if you sucked some of this air out of this thing, we wouldn't even have the 15 minutes. So yeah, we're really crunching this whole thing down, which it doesn't need to take months to tell like it did in the comics. But given that it's a very character-based piece in the comics, talking about it like it's a Chopin thing, that it feels like there would be room in this for a little less fighting, a little more time at very least, and for the big deal of confronting the major villains and also dealing with the Batman fallout. That stuff gets very not swept under the rug but rushed. And again, that's kind of the issue too of it not being part of an ongoing series of comic book storytelling. It's like, well, Batman leaves the Justice League at the end, but who really cares? Is this Justice League the canon of the next Justice League movie? Does that matter to us very much? And in the comics, again, not fair to compare really. In the comics, Batman wasn't in the league for a while and came back, and there was this matter of trust, and they all revealed each other's identities to each other ultimately, which at that time in the continuity was the first time that everybody knew I'm Bruce Wayne. Like that was a big deal at that time. And whether or not that's your favorite story.
And then Brett Meltzer came in and screwed it all up a few years after that.
Sure. Well, that stuff's there's not one way to tell that story, and it doesn't have to be the comic version, but all to say that that's something that matters more when something else is coming up next for the Justice League, when you get to see the characters of the Justice League deal with the fallout. In this case, you really kind of had Batman pull a sullen teenager and say, if you don't like the way I do things, then fuck it, I'm out of here. Which is a bit Batman, depending on your interpretation. Perhaps he is feeling, maybe he feels, he says, I would do it again. Which I agree with him. I don't necessarily disagree with Batman on this, and I don't know about telling them to do it, that I'm doing it. Not because I think that's a fun way to do it or a friendly way to do it, but I agree with gun control, right? I don't trust the government of the DC universe to control them, because Amanda Waller and everybody else is pulling shit over there. So they do need to be regulated somehow, if only that. Is Batman the guy? I don't know, but it makes sense that you need these things, and not telling them does make sense to me, but also the betrayal makes sense to me. But what do we get to see? I agree with Batman. I don't agree with Batman. I'm out of here. And there is a nice moment with Superman basically showing us his very Superman moment of, I'm going to give you the kryptonite bullet, and the implication being, if you just would have asked me, I would have given this to you because I trust you. And I know that Batman has that moment where they're like, what's the plan for Batman if Batman goes bad? And he says, the Justice League. That's great. But I think that moment with Superman is the thing that would get to Batman more of, I would have given you this. You didn't have to keep this from me. I would have given you that kind of vulnerability with me because I'm Superman and I'm the coolest, nicest guy in the world.
There's also, and I love that moment too. On the other hand, I'm going to argue against it too, because in the comic book, there's this really great scene where they're all voting and it's locked, and it's a locked vote. Yeah. And Superman's the deciding vote. And then they cut away and they go to, because they're going to tell Batman what the result of the vote is, and Batman's gone. And they're like, does he knows how you'll vote? And he's like, do you think he knows how you would have voted? And he's like, oh yeah, I think so. And then Batman's just gone. So the implication is that, but they never say exactly whether Superman voted to keep him in or to expel him. And I thought that was a cool moment in the comic, which again does lead into this very awesome conversation between Superman and Batman in the Batcave during the not the Queen of Fables, but the storyline right after that. And yes. And so I don't know. I kind of wish, I do love that moment when he gives him the kryptonite bullet and that idea. I would have trusted you anyway if you just asked me. But at the same time, too, I also kind of wish I could have seen that scene play out where we don't know what Superman's decision would have been, and that good moment where Batman just kind of assumes the worst and leaves.
And who knows, that might have felt more in line with that may have felt more satisfying in in something that is so self-contained as this movie that we don't know. I mean, there hasn't been certainly not a direct follow-up to it, but I don't even know what the next Justice League movie that was made was, but I don't think it's picking up this exact, like, formation of characters or these.
No.
Yeah.
After this, we got into Flashpoint Paradox, which then led into the DCAMU, which is why I had always thought this was kind of like a precursor to Paradox, because we see Cyborg joining and everything like that. And we get into, but no, it looks like, looking at Wikipedia, it looks like you were right. This was actually intended to be a sequel to Crisis on Two Earths. I know they use the same designs for that as well, but also it says here that was intended to be like kind of like of a pair.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, even in the Justice League comics of that time, specifically the Grant Morrison run, yes, there's continuity between these stories, but they were pretty, like, contained arcs that carried over certain, not even, the only subplot really was, like, the final villain, the final boss of the Grant Morrison run, Mageddon, at the end is showing up and popping up. But for the most part, it's like, hey, for 2 to 4 to 6 issues, you're going to get a Justice League story, and in the next one, it'll be a slightly different characters from the Justice League, and a new story will start. And that's fine for these movies and these characters, because I mean, these movies come out relatively infrequently. You don't want to be waiting around for, they're not like big, blockbusters where you're like, I gotta know what happens at the end of Avatar 3 because Avatar 2 ended this way. So that's fine. But I think this story, if you don't take a hard stance at the end, and you're not going to follow it up, maybe the version from the comics is the better answer of leave it up in the air what Superman would have said, and even what Batman feels about all this.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe so.
So where would you put this kind of like in your ranking of these Justice League animated movies?
I haven't seen very many of them. I haven't even seen the one that it's essentially a sequel to. I think I've started a number of them, like, over the years on HBO, probably just looking for something to watch. I know I've started Flashpoint. I did enjoy the Justice League series on television. I watched a decent amount of that. And I think ultimately I enjoyed that experience a little more than this. And I think it's because they had a little more room to play with character. They had, I know this is a movie, so you have a certain amount of time, but because it was serialized, it felt a little bit different. I certainly think this is well made. I was entertained, and I like that they chose this story. It's a good story from the comics to pull. But I don't think I quite have the watching history to really do a good comparison in that way, other than to say I do think the Justice League benefits from serialized storytelling and more time because of the amount of characters, if nothing else.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, it doesn't hold a candle to the animated series. I'll definitely agree with that. But in terms of just the animated movies, I definitely put this one on the higher end. I think it's really solid. I like it better than when they were trying to do the shared continuity ones, where they're trying to adapt the New 52 stuff, or even the Tomorrowverse stuff with the.
What about Earth 2? Did they adapted that?
Earth
right?
2, yeah, Earth 2, and I saw we covered that on the show about a year or so ago, I think, and. It's okay, but I think I prefer this one.
Yeah. And it's funny because that was a standalone, the story, the Morrison story that's based on. I assume that they were doing kind of an adaptation of that. That was a true one and done. That was a graphic novel, that was just like separate from the series. That makes sense as a movie even more than this. I think if you just look at the plot and the idea behind it, yes, we're going to meet our mirror selves and then it's over kind of thing. But it's interesting that this one played out better for you than that one that seems better suited to being a movie. But obviously,
they also made a lot of changes to that one as well. So there's that aspect of it too. I think as an adaptation, I think this one does some things that make sense. Like the idea of Vandal Savage aside, I think for the most part, I do like the idea of making it more of a Justice League story instead of, to your point, where it's just like a Batman story with the Justice League tacked onto it.
Yeah.
This makes more of an attempt to make it a full-on Justice League story, which worked better for it. But I think if I was going to pick, like, out of all of them, honestly, some of the standalone ones with the solo heroes still work better for me, like the Death and Return of Superman two-parter, even like the Superman Batman Apocalypse ones, the ones based on the Jeff Loeb comics, those were really solid too. In fact, next episode we're gonna be covering Public Enemies. But I think the one I like the best, I think, out of all of them is probably the Dark Knight Returns two-parter. I think that one was an incredible adaptation, distillation of that comic book. Incredibly faithful, but also fix some things that I had some problems with. Like I think the idea of not doing the narration actually does work a lot better for that.
Yeah. You don't necessarily want to hear all that. I don't think I may have watched the first part of that, but I know that I watched the year one adaptation, which I liked.
That one's good too.
And that's also just a story that's like, okay, well, this is literature to me in comics. I love this original storyline, so I'm very excited about this kind of thing. Feels, even though it's still just a man in a bat suit fighting crime, it feels like more quote unquote serious business than the superheroes have betrayed each other. How we solved this, that, which is, I love all that stuff too. But like that is, it's very different, even if you just pare it down to a few heroes versus 7 heroes and 7 or 8, actually 8 heroes, I think, and then or whatever it is, like 15 characters that you're juggling and the thing, and there's no reason or no wonder that you end up with, we're like, oh, well, how did Superman really feel about this? Or how did the Flash feel about this? Or what are the characters like? I think Wonder Woman may have been, besides Martian Manhunter, the most underserved, and even Martian Manhunter got a solo scene where they're giving him a birthday party for some reason. But like Wonder Woman just is, I just fight Cheetah, that's my life, kind of thing. But that's, you have an hour and 15 minutes. What are you going to do? Like, yeah.
Okay, well, Will, thanks so much for coming on again.
Of course.
Got to have you come on a lot more frequently than however long past last time.
Yes,
but before we go out, why don't you tell people where they can find you?
You know what? I think the best place to experience something I have to offer is to either go to the Days Past Tooncast podcast, and you can find that on Instagram at DP Tooncast. Or you can always check out the sketch comedy YouTube that I had mentioned before, which is at The Wickedly Talented. Yes, you may have to sift through some John Travolta, but watch those because they're funny too. But yeah, there's a Batman sketch up, the Lost Batman episode. I think if you're a Batman fan, it's worth watching.
Okay, I'm going to check that out myself, and the link will be in the show notes, so you guys can just go scroll down and click that, and you can take you right there. As for us, superherocinefiles.com is the website, superherocinefiles.com on Blue Sky, Super Cinema Pod on Instagram and Threads, technically, but mostly just post on Blue Sky these days. And as a reminder, if you sign up for Patreon or my Substack, links for those in the show notes, and you can get a free trial to read the Corsair serial that I mentioned at the top of the show, so please check those 2 things out. That does it for now. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks for listening to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. Superhero Cinephiles is produced by me, Percival Constantine. The show is created by myself and the late, great Derek Ferguson, our host emeritus. Visit us on the web at superherocinephiles.com to listen to past episodes or find out how you can be a guest yourself. Support the show by visiting our advertiser links or click the Buy Me a Coffee link on the website to make a one-time donation. We are Super Cinema Pod on both Instagram and Blue Sky, so please be sure to follow us. We'd also appreciate if you could rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and share us with your friends.
Thank you for listening. And as always, good night, good evening. God bless.